Good morning. This is Debra V. Wilson. It is Monday, the 20th of November, 2017. The time is 800 hours and 5 minutes, and that's GMT minus 6. Today's podcast, I'm going to try to keep it brief because this is literally a sampling of something I'm working on in my research. So I am going to keep it brief. But the title of the podcast is The Militarization of Muslim Identities. This podcast touches on, and this is going to be an overview of, again, something I'm working on more in depth. This podcast touches on politically constructed identities, and some of the most well-known politically constructed identities would be about African Americans, fill in the blanks, Jewish people globally, fill in the blanks, and Asian, such as Chinese, and for a time Japanese academic students, fill in the blanks. Well, there's a host of what can only be described as almost meme-like characterizations of Muslims. In the number one characterization of Muslims, and again, just for reference and clarity, I am Muslim, I'm Sunni, is that we're a monolith. So typically and the ramifications of that is when a Muslim commits a crime that's labeled terrorism, the entire 5 billion of us are characterized by the actions of a few. But the other thing that I have noticed, and maybe it's not even but, and the other thing I've noticed is that behavior, any type of behavior about Muslims that a Muslim engages in, it's a Muslim thing. And I think that's led to the militarization of Muslim identities. For example, because there's a very small space and construct of what some people view as Muslim, and that can be people inside the Muslim community, inside Muslim communities, as well as people who are not Muslims. So Muslims are this or that. And so if you stray from that, both the state and civil society might think you're militarized. For instance, if a Muslim woman is feminist, doesn't cover, very outspoken, some people in Muslim communities, as well as people who are not in Muslim communities, might think you're an asset for the state because there is no real Muslim woman. For instance, I was raised in a Catholic Muslim home. I'm a convert. Although I was, as a child, engaging in expressions of religiosity that are best categorized as Muslim. Nevertheless, my official title was I was a Catholic. I converted to Islam in my 40s. I never stopped going to Catholic church and mosque. So that works for me. I'm happy with it. I'm defined as a Muslim. I'm a feminist. The vast majority of my friends and associates are not Muslim. In addition to that, many of them are Jews, and I have been to Israel. So, I'm constructed by some in and outside Muslim spaces is that I'm not real, and I must be working for the state, because no real Muslim or Muslim woman would exhibit the behaviors or have the interests that I do. I am aware of Muslim women that from Muslim majority countries who are in Canada, and they're in Canada precisely because they had to flee their country of birth because they were deemed not Muslim enough, so they must be a foreign asset of some quote unquote Western country. And then for some of those women, they've also encountered by within Muslim communities here in Canada that, well, they're not really Muslim, are they? Because of their particular political ideologies or interests. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to post something from, yet again, Tommy Robinson. And I don't know the people that he's talking about personally. I don't have an opinion about who they are or what they are. But Tommy Robinson talks about this person, a group of people that he believes aren't actually Muslims because they're too diverse, that they're actually people who've left the faith. And so this is yet Tommy Robinson's validation for people who are Muslim can't wholly and fully and don't wholly and fully integrate into Western society, aka UK cultures. I think that's very important because I've been accused of the same thing. In my case, I was accused of working for the British because there's no real Muslim like me. And as I said, I've met here in Canada Muslim women from Muslim majority countries. From their home countries, they were told the same thing. Now, whatever it was that they had stepped out of the box, however, whatever that box is, they'd stepped out of it. And so because they'd stepped out of it, because there's such a small construct for what is a Muslim, and particularly for what is a Muslim woman. And then I think also some countries have reached out to diversity, normal, healthy diversity in the Muslim community, because diversity in any community typically is normal and healthy. But I think it's been a tactic for some security apparatuses to reach out to diversity, to ask them to actually work as an informant. And I think two things have happened because of that. That has further constructed diversity in the Muslim communities is not organic, but a tool of the state. That's only enabled that. And then I think in some cases it has encouraged, because people don't want to work for the state and they don't want to be isolated from their communities. I think it's encouraged people who exhibit some diversity to keep their heads down, which only I think can facilitate this narrative, which is utterly ridiculous, that all Muslims are alike. I think it's important. I don't agree with the conclusions that Tommy Robinson comes up with, but I am, as ever, curious about the basis of some of his observations. So when I saw this video that I will provide a clip of, I've heard this before in the UK. It happened to me in the US. That this narrative that if you are quote unquote too diverse, that you're not really a real Muslim, that you must be a tool of the state, some state. You're a tool of somebody's state, because Muslims are a monolith. We're not diverse. And so then, because that observation that Tommy Robinson made, which I disagree with, but nevertheless I've heard the observation numerous times from not only civil society, but from state actors as well, then I wonder, where did that come from? What's fostering that? What's nurturing that? It's just a bit of thinking and analysis I'm doing early this morning. And I said this was going to be a really top, overreaching overview. So the concept I'm looking at is the militarization of Muslim identities. And what that's done to collective Muslim communities, and what that means when security apparatuses look at Muslim communities and what they see, and how that impacts their security modeling. It's a bunch of stuff this early in the morning, right? But that's what I'm thinking about. Thank you very much. This is Debra V. Wilson.
Dzień dobry, jesteśmy w małym angielskim miasteczku. Koło mnie jest Tommy Robinson. Trochę znany w Polsce i trochę nieznany. Bardzo mi zależy na tym, żeby dać Tomiemu okazję do tego, żeby powiedzieć, co tak naprawdę myśli w sposób wolny od poprawności politycznej. Oczywiście jestem przekonany, że z poglądami Tomiego można się zgadzać lub nie, ale warto je znać i jestem pewny, że to, co robi Tommy, wynika z jego pojęcia wolności. Bardzo mi miło Cię widzieć. Dziękuję, że znalazłeś czas dla mnie.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to talk.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry.
Co możesz powiedzieć na temat polskiej historii? Znasz może Dywizjon 303 lub taką postać jak Jan III Sobieski?
I'm aware of Polish history. I'm aware of their fearsome fighting and their history to fight. And I'd say that if I was to sum up even the Polish community that have come to our country, if I was to sum the Polish community up in, say, 5 words, it would be strong. I'd say religious as well. That is what we see. Hard-working, loyal, and just, yeah, a credit to your country. Where I sense we're going now in Europe, I think, again, the Polish people will be needed, and their history of fighting against these problems will be needed. And I think that whereas a lot of people around the world always look to us, to Britain, and at different times, I think now that Western Europe will be looking to Eastern Europe for help in the problems we're going to face. So I understand that the Polish don't feel that, or that throughout history, that their commitment and the sacrifice that they gave would have been recognised properly. It should have been, and we recognise. And when we talk about division, I even know when the Polish community would have come into England, there would have been teething problems for a couple of years. Now, if you speak to any average English person, they're grateful to the Polish community who've come, grateful for the hard-working, decent people. From the English point of view, we're grateful for the sacrifice that the Polish gave in the Battle of Britain, and I think they had more kills per head than anyone else in that battle, and we probably wouldn't have this be free as we were today if it wasn't for the sacrifice of the Polish people. And looking up the Polish king with the gates of Vienna, the Battle of the Gates of Vienna, I've read up myself, and he seems like he was a warrior. I know the Polish were seen as the saviour of Christendom. The Polish king was seen as the saviour of Christendom. He saved Christendom from the onslaught and the attack and the takeover from the Islamic armies. And unfortunately, I think that Polish people are going to have to come as a saviour once again with the struggle we're heading towards.
Przyglądając się Twojej działalności, bardzo łatwo jest się pogubić. Zakładałeś English Defence League, wycofałeś się potem z tego, współpracowałeś z liberalnymi muzułmanami, z Majidem Nałazem, potem z Pegidą. Ostatnio można było przeczytać w polskiej prasie na temat Twojej głośnej dyskusji z księgarzem w Birmingham. Kim dzisiaj jest Tommy Robinson?
My whole life has been a learning experience. From where I'm brought up, from where I've grown up in Luton. For those in Poland who don't know about Luton, it was a launch pad for the fertilizer bomber, the Stockholm bomber. It's had the most terrorists per head than anywhere else in Europe. We have 40% Muslims. We have 30 mosques, just 30 mosques in my hometown. So my whole life I've experienced the problems that Islam will bring. Because of that, I established the English Defence League. I've always been searching for an answer. We need an answer. And if people back home don't realise how embedded this problem is in our country, how huge this problem is, there's zero integration, zero assimilation. We have people in our country who wish to cause us harm and war and subjugate us as non-Muslims. We have 100 Sharia courts. So I've learned. I set up the English Defence League. I then left the English Defence League trying to find a more politicised way to deal with this problem and speak about this problem. you're right, I did cooperate with what I would have been seen as liberal Muslims, but what I found out was that they were just not Muslims. They were apostates, but they're not free to say they're apostates. So again, when they're talking about the issues, they're talking about them from a non-Muslim point of view. I don't see in my learning curve that there's any chance of reformation for Islam. Recently, my recent activities, when you talk about Britain First, I was reporting. So currently what I'm doing now is reporting for an organisation called Rebel Media, which is I see as a good outlet to raise these issues and highlight these issues. The media in the UK, I don't know how it is in Poland, but the media in the UK have all slandered, lied and attacked anyone who speaks out against the status quo of the liberal elite or the government. Anyone who criticises Islam is put into a box and slandered as a racist, as an extremist, as a Nazi, all things that we're not. We're just simply criticising a fascist and violent ideology.